Great. So today we're joined by the renowned Jack Pellegrino from County of San Diego. Jack, I'm sure that there's probably very few people that don't know who you are, at least by name and reputation. But why don't you give an intro and then we'll jump into some discussion.
Hi, Dustin. It's great to join you today and everyone. Jack Pellegrino. I'm the current director of purchasing and contracting here at County of San Diego. Been in this role a little bit over 13 years now, and previously served in many other capacities as a procurement and contracts director in the aerospace industry. So half my career has been in public, half of it's been in private. So glad to join you today.
Excellent. Well, you and I have known each other over the years. Certainly, and most prevalent in that is going to be some of our involvement in CAPPO over the years, which is a great organization. And boy, this year I think they set the bar pretty high. I don't know how much better it can be. So talk about your role in CAPPO, and I mean let's talk for a minute about how well that all went.
Yeah, I mean, it was really an exciting year. A couple years past the pandemic here. I'm a past president, as you remember. I was the president during right at the end of the pandemic. I had the first conference post-pandemic, which was in Pasadena, and we struggled to get the better part of just 200 people at that first back in-person conference. This year, a couple years later, we had a record of almost 650 delegates and almost 150 supplier partners that participated in the vendor show. And so really, your comment, Dustin, it was right on the mark. The curriculum that we presented and the folks that were in, it was an extraordinary learning experience. And what makes CAPPO unique in that it's all focused on work here in California. That's what CAPPO is, California Association of Public Procurement Officials. And doing business here is a little bit different than what we find with our colleagues across the nation. When we go to NIGP or associations like that, which procurement's not the same in all jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the content was really good. I got to speak on AI a couple of times. I have a speech that is somewhat more oriented at strongly encouraging people as individuals to get in and touch and experience. So we're developing an AI-ready workforce, and the breakout that I had on that was standing room, and then you helped to facilitate an AI presentation the next day that you guys were generous to invite me to, and that was also standing room. So there was a lot of interest in that topic, and I'm sure the content topics were super well attended. When you're in the lunchroom, I mean, it's filling 3 or 4 sections, and so yes, that was a flat out 650, 700 people, and they all showed up. So I think that it was very excellently put together.
Yeah, it's all about, you and I have spoken at length about this. It's all about, even though we need to connect as professionals in continuous learning. And, every time I have a conversation with you, I learn something. Every time I have a conversation with our colleagues or go to a conference like this, it's about making ourselves current. And I'll call it more proficient in what we do as a profession, so we can help our organizations.
Yep. My last couple of reminiscing comments on CAPPO is as a supplier, you really, a lot of the value that you get out of events depends on how willing people are to actually kind of get in and have conversations. And I will say I was extremely impressed that people didn't avoid the expo hall, and in fact were involved and engaged. I I can tell you without spilling tea that that doesn't happen in every event. And so I was really pleased that culturally the government side was willing to talk to their suppliers as partners. I think that's super important. And overall, the staff that helps make sure that that expo hall together is extremely receptive to feedback and conversation. And so overall, the CAPPO conference, I think for any suppliers who are in public procurement, you should be at CAPPO. And the fact that it's in California in January is also a big plus for those of us who are freezing in other parts of the world. So,
well, that's a great observation and insight, because someone has to be here. My background, and doing it in Palm Springs is really was a benefit. We had some rain, but not as quite as bad as the last week, so we kind of lucked out there. But your comment and insight about our ability to connect with our suppliers and partners, I think that's reflected. I've seen a change over my 13 years in the public side here, that I think we have matured as a profession. And I'll say it's a silver lining of what happened during COVID. We were not successful. We would have not been successful if we didn't have relationships with our business partners. We're all adults, professionals. We know where those red lines are. We know I'm not gonna take gratuities or lunches or kickbacks or any of that, but to have a conversation with a potential, either a current or potential business provider, is something we have to do, because when the things are going tough and you're in the middle of an emergency, who are you going to call? Now, we all know what the rules are. There are times where we have to pull down, I call it pull down the shades in our discussion, and say, okay, we're in the middle of a procurement, or we're writing the requirements for this future procurement, so we can't go deeper in our discussion. But we surely can talk about current practices, future best practices, and really it helps both the governments as well as the providers, because any provider is trying to use a term from if you're a sport lover, you're trying to skate where the puck is going to be, not chasing the puck after the fact. Any successful business enterprise will be skating to where the puck's going to be. And so that's why it's crucial for us as governments and procurement professionals to help organizations that we want to solicit to provide us goods and services, to give them an idea where they need to be.
Yep.
So they'll be ready.
And suppliers are creating new things all the time. And especially if we continue to write really requirement heavy RFPs, it's very important to learn where people are creating new things. I mean, Civic talks about AI. We're building a couple of things that are in some ways for our own use, because we feel like like all organizations right now, if you're not assessing the impact of AI and trying to explore and develop, then I think you're at risk. And so for us, we're way out on the edge on some of what I would consider to be the core AI, and it's not even our core business, but I feel like we have to. And so having those conversations, I think, helps to learn and extend knowledge. And so overall, it was really well done, and congratulations for your continued kind of assistance in their success.
Thank you.
So let's come back to your day job. So CPO for County of San Diego. That sounds like a pretty sweet gig, Jack.
Well, it's every day is different, Dustin. Whether it be and it really is it's a wonderful job. What I'm really blessed here is I have a great procurement team. I have 77 folks in the department. 50 some are procurement professionals, And we do everything. I think I'll just say for the record here, we are a centralized procurement function. And so all procurements, services, and products come through our organization. Where we do allow some delegated authority is we do low value transactions, and we use our purchase card, a P card, a Visa card, and that's delegated to departments within certain bounds. And my responsibility, I have a department that manages and audits that on a monthly basis. But because of that, I describe everything we do. We buy everything from paper clips and office supplies to health services is a huge part of my portfolio. And then on the other side, I do some fun things, like we just bought a dual engine helicopter to help for our sheriff department because of the backcountry that we have here. We are often faced with, putting out spot fires on a regular basis. And the dual engine helicopter, it's the first generation of the next Dell helicopter. I think has 350 gallons tank on the bottom. And it's fascinating, Dustin, they can drop it from 40 feet on a spot to put out a fire. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I got to buy that, and I got a picture with it. I haven't gotten a ride yet, but they promised once they get it up in the air that I'm going to get a ride. So
that's excellent. And to quickly echo on the comment, if you're listening on chat, we can actually see your chat. So if you have a question that you want to throw in, please feel free to, and we'll consume it as we go. So Jack, you shared a little deck with me. We can sort of skim through anything you'd like to highlight in this in terms of what San Diego's doing. So just tell me where you'd like me to go, and we'll jump through this for a few minutes.
So first of all, if you wanted to look at this, there's a little, the website's right on the bottom. You can click on it. It takes you right to our homepage. If you want to slide to the next page.
Since some people will be listening to this, do you want to just say it out loud real quick?
Sure. So if you go to San Diego.gov, San Diego County.gov, and if you, on the home page, if you see on the right hand side, there'll be a drop down that says business, and then it goes right over to procurement. So that'll get you to here. Won't go through the words. Why don't we just go to the picture charts? Might be best. What I've done, Dustin, over the years, and the reason we're so successful is we've aligned our organization to my operating groups. County of San Diego is approximately 20,000, a workforce of about 20,000 people. Kind of a cocktail fact for people is we're the second largest county in the state of California. We're the fourth in the nation with about 3.3 million residents. So from an operational point of view, you see on the left-hand side, or depending on how you're looking at the screen, how we're organized. And what has been very successful for us is we've organized my procurement support teams to align to the groups and departments that we're supporting. At the end of the day, our team is here to get our operating groups and departments what they need, when they need it, for a fair and reasonable price, within the rules. And those rules are often very varied, and they may be different. Whether I have federal funding, state funding, or it's just under local jurisdiction. So that's really the expertise that we bring, the value added. And I know you talk about value added every time I speak with you. About how are we adding value to our departments.
We want procurement to be more than purchasing. there's nothing dishonorable about purchasing, but we can't stop at the action of the small box. We have to build the whole sphere around the small box. And I mean, you have a great team here, lots of names that people recognize. And I mean, it looks like you have enough span of people to cover a lot of topics. And it looks like you've probably organized them into some category management type structure. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's kind of, I would say, less category management, more of operational management.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, if it just, I know it might be an eye chart, but if you look at supporting, my biggest group that we support is Health and Human Services. We spend the better part of $1 billion in health and civic services, and doing that health services, everything from rehabilitation services for people with behavioral health problems, or providing nursing support for we have two hospitals we run, or providing aging independent services. That's much different than when I'm supporting the Department of Public Works,
Mm-hmm.
building roads, or even the sheriff when I buy helicopters for them or vehicles for them. So my goal is to have my procurement staff, and I appreciate that you say the word purchasing. We call them procurement or
Mm-hmm.
acquisition professionals. It's a broader, yes, purchasing is more transactional, and we have a lot of transactions we do, but it's about forming a relationship, which is procurement and acquisition professional. I'll call it a deeper relationship.
Plus, you give them a job title that feels like it's part of a career path, right? I mean, I know that you've spoken specifically about thinking about how you design the work so that people can see a long path. Maybe talk about how you've decided how to give people job titles and if you've taken that into account.
Yeah, one of the things, and I will say that is evolving as we speak, because it's a very competitive work environment right now. We have a younger generational workforce coming in that has expectations that not necessarily are they're different of when I started my career many years ago. We'll leave that behind. We won't talk about how long ago that was. But let me do say, we talk about AI. I remember when I was doing procurement, Dustin, with the green forms, multi forms, and we were using a Selectric typewriter. And if you made a mistake, you had to go correct all the forms under it with different color correction. Now, all right, so that was before computers. Thank God we don't do that anymore. But I think one of the things is, as leadership or as leaders, we have to evolve our work titles, protocols, trainings, expectations to motivate today's professionals and to bring people into our professional. I still think we're going to have a challenge looking forward is how do we get people excited to do what you and I do, to be in the procurement workforce.
Yeah, I have a speech called Talking It Up, which is, it's got little games and stuff embedded in it. And it's specifically talking about both how we talk to ourselves about this job and how we don't sell ourselves short in our conversations in our own head. And then when we're in situations where we're talking to the next generation, how do we use words and concepts that draws them into the ability to have impact, and and or being able to buy cool helicopters, which is also a cool part of this job, right? But yes, I think that we all have a responsibility on how we think about this job and how we communicate that to bring in a next generation of professionals.
Yeah, I appreciate when you do that, because I think each of us in different venues has the ability to do that. And even when, look, I've been, my neighbor has known me for 30 some years. He still to this day, first of all, thinks I work for the city. And, you know, a lot of people he can't distinguish the difference between the county and the city or the state or the Fed government, right? And he goes, you know, what do you do again? What do you do? I said, well, I mean, at the end of the day, Dustin, what I tell him is my job is to spend your taxpayer dollars, our money, not just his dollars, but my dollars too, wisely for the benefit of our citizens and our taxpayers.
Absolutely. Once you eliminate out things like building depreciation and loan payments and intergovernmental transfers and salaries, you know, 80 to 90% of the money that's left has to go through procurement or through contracting in some way. So there's a lot of opportunity to talk about impact and to create situations where our staff can have opportunities for creativity as well as moving things through. I mean, obviously we have to have throughput in our processes, but when you look at how much of government and the lifeblood of programs and the ability to deliver services ties and connects back mission wise through procurement, we should be carrying that message and lauding that message and using that to attract new people into this work.
Right. Yeah, I agree. If you want to go forward a couple slides to that one, back one. This reflects to that point. This chart reflects exactly what you said. Our budget, our annual budget, is just under $8 billion a year. So that's for the full county. So when you look at what we spend through procurement of supplies and services, I'm at $2 billion of that. So it's 20-some% of our success and failure is directly related, you know, almost a quarter of our success or failure is dependent upon the effectiveness of our contractors and our suppliers that we're engaging with. So
it's awesome. Yeah, it's excellent.
You know,
An excellent slide for sure.
So, and the fun thing about this slide is, you know, I mentioned Health and Human Civic Services, you know, but there's also construction on the one end, all the way through, you know, the types of things that you get involved with. I really, I just recently started to be an adjunct professor here at USD, University of San Diego, in supply chain management. And one of the things, I have a class right now that's with for operations management. And what a great segue for MBA students or undergrads to talk about everything we do is part of operations management, and it all plays together. Okay. If I can't get the goods and services that our departments need, we're going to have a problem. Our residents aren't going to get what they need. So it's really an exciting career. So I'm hopefully through that, and getting people excited. Well, what do I want to do when I graduate? Well, let me try procurement. Let me try this thing called procurement.
Yep. Well, let's hold a deeper dig into that program to the end, because I do want to sit and talk about that for a minute. In terms of this deck, is there anything else that you'd like to jump to that talks about San Diego's story?
Yeah, I would say if you want to push forward, the thing, go back one. Thank you. This one is really, really awesome, because this is how, first of all, we measure ourselves, as you can see from this whole deck. Very early on, we decided we have to have KPIs. Okay. We have to know. I had one of my former bosses said to me, Jack, how do we know that procurement's doing well? And I said, well, April, you haven't gotten any complaints. Well, she goes, and she laughed at me. She goes, well, that's not deep enough. I haven't gotten any complaints. How about let's start to demonstrate what we're doing. for the enterprise. And so I started to my journey to KPIs, and managing and really measuring things that mattered. So one of the things that matters for our organization here, for my board of supervisors, we have a board policy that says the way we do our business is competitively. Okay. We don't do, I will say we limit the amount of no bid contracts or single source contracts. And so that's where you see this chart. So last fiscal year, which, the last full year that we did, which was the end of last June, we awarded 94% of what's eligible for competition competitively. And that includes, you can see a line on there is cooperative procurements. So I'm using piggybacks on previously other agency and cooperative awarded contracts. But that's really, this is one of the key metrics that we hold ourselves to. And then if you slide to the next slide here, internally, I'm very proud. You can see the third column there, where it talks about the number of transactions we did or the number of actions we did. If you go down to the RFP line, you see we did 178 RFPs last year. So that's more than a dozen. That's a dozen a month that we're doing a full SSC on. And what I'm really pleased to say about our staff is we've kind of worked it to a best practice is the median time is 117 days from issuing of an RFP to notice of award of a contract. And so I've been able to overcome the urban legend that all of our organizations hear from time to time in purchasing or procurement, that, oh no, I got to go through procurement or purchasing and they take forever. The old legend here was that procurement took 12 months to do an RFP. Well, I can prove that we're not taking 12 months to do an RFP.
That's right. Well, good measuring. I mean, one of our main pillars of work these days is helping procurement shops deal with RFPs for specific competencies or capabilities. And so, absolutely doing that number of RFPs with all internal shop and turning it in that time frame, that's crazy laudable. So great job to you guys.
Yeah. And, I won't say that, the biggest thing to overcome some of this is people were saying, well, there was a concern that we were going to use this punitively, and it wasn't the case at all. We're using it to understand what the outliers are, right? Because there are some things that are going to take a lot more than 117 days, but hopefully we can articulate and make sure that it's happening for the right reason.
Let's come out of this deck, but is there anything you want to hit before I move it off?
I don't think so. I mean, those were a couple of the key takeaways. I mean, really everything, what we talk about is everything we do absolutely has to be ethical, transparent. And we really are looking. It's one of the reasons why I've always enjoyed my engagements with you, and whether it be at a conference or something like this, because we learn from each other. Back to where we started this discussion.
Well, that's kind. I appreciate it. I definitely learned from you on the stuff that you're working on. So you're at a high point in your career and a lot of success there. So I mean, and you mentioned private and public. So I'll blend a couple of questions that I had on the list. How did you kind of get to where you had the ability to do this job? And, how does that speak to people who are trying to think about how they build a career in this space? So how did you get to this chair, Jack? And kind of what was the success criteria that got you there?
Well, it wasn't that I had in mind, I want to be the director of purchasing contract for County San Diego. No, that didn't happen. I started in school as an economics degree, graduated, and frankly, I had two job offers. I could have been a bank examiner for the Federal Deposit and Insurance Corporation in Salinas, Kansas. If you know where Salinas, Kansas is, out Dodge City, it's way out there in the middle of nowhere. I went to school in Kansas, in Benedictine College, small Catholic school in the Midwest. So, and my other job offer was TRW in Manhattan Beach, California. And they said, you could be a buyer in procurement. And I go, what's procurement? What's a buyer? What am I doing? So, I came to the coast, Manhattan Beach. How tough was that?
Yeah, it's an easy choice.
It didn't take me more than about a minute.
Right.
Became a buyer, and it was really kind of cool that I could use some of the things that I learned about, macroeconomics and microeconomics, and it was practical, and I wasn't, by buying goods and services for the corporation TRW, and we were building satellites for the U.S. government. And I got to say, Dustin, I kind of fell into this, and I go, wow, I can make a career out of this. And every night I went home and I said, boy, that was kind of fun. Now there's problems with it. So, what I encourage people, and some of my colleagues at the time, I remember, they kind of figured out pretty clearly that procurement is a demanding job because you're never caught up. Things are always urgent. And if you don't like conflict or you don't like problem solving, it's probably not the profession for you. Would that be fair? Would you look at those three things?
You have to be, you definitely have to be willing to put yourself in situations where decisions have to be made, and you're dealing with folks on the other side who, they're putting a lot of time and effort into the thing. And at the end of the day, somebody has to win an outcome. And so you have to sort of cloak yourself in the understanding that as a steward, you have to be, you have to find strength in situations that maybe in your personal life, you don't necessarily want to, quibble about a thing, but part of the job does say that you have to create an environment for competition, and then you have to establish a way to drive to an outcome, and then you have to hold the vendor that won that work accountable to what they committed to in the procurement process. So yes, it does require a certain amount of internal strength and understanding of what the work is.
Right. And, quite honestly, I think my back in the day when I was my younger colleagues, some of them didn't want that responsibility. And I understand that, or didn't enjoy the dynamic nature of our job. And, those pressure points that you just described. The way I relieve those pressure points for myself is always full transparency. And that is with both my internal customers of what we can do and what we can't do and why. And then also with building, we're going to go back to discussing relationships with vendors or suppliers, transparency with them as well, of what we can do and what we can do and where my boundaries are. And what my expectations are, because truly it is about building a win-win situation. I don't come to work every day to damage suppliers and not allow suppliers to be profitable or successful, or I'm going to get if I drive to the very best, I get some smoking deal, and it's to the detriment of a supplier or a contractor, and they lose money on it. Chances are the next time I go back, what's going to happen? That supplier is going to get even with me potentially to recoup their losses, or worst case, they're not there because of they're not able to be sustainable. So I know it's an overused phrase about being win-win, but I think sometimes we kind of miss that
Right.
about and don't apply that.
Well, to extend that with a supplemental thought, there's individual negotiations that may happen, kind of like there's individual weather, there's weather and there's climate, right? I mean, they're related, but they're not the same. So an individual transaction, you may win, or you may have put it in a way where it's extremely aggressive, but that's not a supply chain mentality. A supply chain mentality says, I have to establish a supplier core to meet the needs of the city or the county. And I have to be able to allow people to have enough space to be able to function as part of my vendor portfolio. I need to be a business partner of choice. People need to want to do business with us. They can't avoid doing business with us because we have bad reputation on payments or artificially extending the amount of time that it takes to pay invoices or whatever.
Right.
So we have to be a modern business partner. We have to be a fair business partner. And then without being overly preferential, we need to establish relationships with partners that allows them to be successful. And that's part of a supply chain mentality that says it doesn't benefit us to have a supplier who walks away from an interaction with the county and says, that was terrible, I'm never going to do that again, because that's the opposite of what we want in terms of developing a robust vendor community that supports the needs of the county.
Absolutely. By not, it's kind of cutting off your nose in spite of your face, right? It's the road. It is important that I have choices for my customers, and those choices are both from technologically to delivery service to price, and that we're not just always focused. And I think that's a misnomer that sometimes we've been painted this way, or we paint ourselves this way, that public procurement is all about price, the lowest price. Well, there are sometimes in a commodity world, I'm going to go to lowest price, but there's a whole lot more in my portfolio that the majority of what I buy, Dustin, I'm doing under best value procurements. So it's other factors and price, and it's not I hear my supervisors from time to time, they go, it's a race to the bottom. That's all purchasing worries about is the lowest price. And I go, no, wait a minute, time out. That's not how we operate.
Yep.
So
you mentioned the adjunct work, and I know that you're involved in a new supply chain program. And I don't know, will the camera allow me to show the picture in there? So you're handing these out at CAPPO, and it sounds pretty interesting. Tell me about kind of what that is and what influence you've had on moving that in a direction, and kind of why you're spending your cycles and your life energy on that.
Yeah. So again, I think it's a natural for us. And I wish when I was in school, there were, I'll just say back in the 80s, okay, there were very few, if any, supply chain management programs. Okay. I was in your traditional, I had a liberal arts degree with an economics degree, but there's so much more in supply chain. Everything in the world is dependent on supply chain. Okay. This program has been around since 89, and it's both an undergraduate program as well as a master's program for working professionals. And it talks about, it's the full gamut of a supply chain, everything from the planning and the market research through procurement, and we're in the middle of that supply chain, through logistics and delivery of a product or service to a customer. And what's kind of cool about this is, especially for the master's program, is now been developed to be a hybrid 22-month program for working professionals where it's still on a semester basis. Most of the work is remote on Teams or Zoom. And once a semester, there's a 3-day on-site. You come to the campus and you spend 3 days, intensive 3 days of classes. And so in the program, over the 22 months, you'll have done that 4 times. So it's truly an innovative program that way. And I'm excited to be part of it because I think there's a blending of, I've been involved with, previously I used to teach for San Diego State, and it was an in-person, classroom experience. And I think what this has done is really blend the best of both of those, because there is obviously value to, like when we had the CAPPO conference or the NIJP conference, or we see each other in person, there's different value of that connection.
Sure.
Versus what we're doing today.
Yeah. So what's your specific role with that program?
So I am an adjunct professor in the program. Right now I'm teaching a class on operational management as part of the undergraduate program. It's one of the required classes. Later semesters I'll be teaching as part of the supply chain management program, the master's program. And right now I'm serving as the interim managing director of the Supply Chain Institute. Now, what the Institute does is just put together a set. There's about a dozen or so representatives from companies, from places like Qualcomm, General Atomics, Bumblebee Tuna, of supply chain professionals, people like ourselves that have been the director of supply chain. They have different titles than you and I have in the public side. I'm the director of purchasing and contracting, but on the commercial side, or in the public or the private side, you'll be the vice president for supply chain for Qualcomm. Same thing I'm doing, buying, but in a different way, right? There's support. So that's what we have, sort of an advisory board to both provide opportunities for the students to talk to us, and also kind of map out for them to be successful in their business. They're going to be needing to hire this talent that's being educated in supply chain. So it serves both interests.
That's excellent. Well, so as we kind of come towards the top of when people probably budgeted their brain time on this, give some advice to folks who are trying to come up in their career. Maybe they're midway or they're just starting. When you look back at things that helped you be successful, or the ability to build a portfolio and a set of work here, like what advice do you have to younger people as they decide how much of their life they're putting towards this, and then how to be successful at it?
Well, I would probably start with, make some collegial friends in the industry. I mean, many of us, I know we talk a lot about, getting a mentor. Okay. My view on mentorship is mentorship is not formal mostly. I know people have formal mentor programs. Mentorship happens, the best mentorship is informally by both peers, supervisors, and other colleagues that may not be in your specific domain. Like you and I just met, a few years back, and we became colleagues, and we've, in many ways mentored each other without saying, that formal term. So what I would say is look for those opportunities to develop collegial relationships. And don't be afraid to look a little bit outside yourself and your current condition, but talk to someone maybe at the city and another role, to try to find, it does two things. It gives you I'll call it the breadth and the depth of you being able to problem solve. Because Dustin, I think you'll agree with this. There are times that we're faced with a challenge, and we've never done it ourselves, and we're like, oh, where do we start? And we'll pick up the phone and we'll call like 2 calls away, and we'll find somebody that maybe has never done it either, but has an idea of someone that has. So that would be my advice: is start to build a network.
Yep.
And there's no 2 paths that will take you. There's no one direct path that will take you to the seat of the really cool gig that I have here in San Diego right now. Like I said,
you're one of my thoughtful leaders, has said before that it's easy to leave a job, it's hard to leave a community. And if you build community within procurement, then even if something in your one particular job doesn't work or it doesn't give you enough space, if you've built connections in a community, then it allows you to say, how can I continue to grow across this? So things like, local groups, of course, like CAPPO, or then even NIGP chapters within your regional areas. NIGP does a lot of great things to build connections, especially on the local and muni level. There's other things. And then, really committing to some sort of an educational path to be able to grow your knowledge, even perhaps beyond what you may have access to within your own day-to-day job. There are several ways to be certified. There's several ways to educate. I mean, programs like the supply chain program that you mentioned, but finding ways to build roots and connections to see the broader path from wherever you happen to be at that moment, and to continue to grow your own knowledge beyond perhaps just what you're able to do in the job today seems like very important cycles. And I'm sure that you make commitments to your team to be able to provide them with educational opportunities to be able to build those kind of connections.
Yeah. What I've told my folks is this is a partnership. A partnership between me as your supervisor or your the head of this organization, that I'm going to give you the ability to improve yourself continuously, whether it be to go to a conference, whether it be to go to educational opportunities. But at the same time, do understand that I may not have the next promotional opportunity for you when you're ready to take that. So that's the partnership. Okay. I just can't create a new position when you're ready. It may cause, or you may have to make that personal decision that it may be to go lateral, to go up. Okay. Because my opportunity is not here. Preferably I'd like you to stay with us, but I do understand there's sometimes that I don't have that position open right now. So that's always but it does make me very proud when someone gets promoted into a higher functioning position. And I know that they've learned the tools of the trade right here. So.
Well, great. Well, I think we've probably consumed people's mental lunch break, and I think we hit most of the questions that I wanted to go through. So really thankful for you jumping on and sharing some thoughts about CAPPO, your observations on from the excellence that you're building at the county, and some of the great things that you're doing with that supply chain program. And I think we delved into a lot of discussions about building the profession, which is always something that I enjoy spending time on. So Kind of you to jump on, Jack.
Well, and thanks for having me, Dustin, and we will see you probably at NIGP Forum next, right?
Yeah. I'm going to Houston in a few weeks for that leadership thing. And then, yes, we'll see you at Forum. So,
Okay.
Well, great. Well, thanks, Jack.
Have a great day. Thanks for everything. Bye-bye.